One of the great restaurant impresarios of this generation, who doesn't get nearly as much press as he deserves, is Alan Stillman, the founder of the Smith & Wollensky Group. Alan Stillman, for those of you who don't know him, is the brains behind TGI Fridays and then the Smith & Wollensky Group, which now has, I believe, 20-some restaurants around the country. It's a publicly traded company doing over $150, $160 million a year in annual sales. Alan fell into the restaurant business accidentally. We'll get to that later, but he's a natural. He's got a deft touch. He understands what you have to deliver. Great food, great service, in great rooms with reasonable prices, and he's been spot on doing that since day one. We're upstairs at Smith & Wollensky with a gentleman that, if you don't know him, you sure should. Mr. Alan Stillman. Alan, thanks for having us here.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Tell me, I know a bit, but tell me a bit about your background. You're a New Yorker, born and bred.
That's true.
Brooklyn boy?
I've been around a while. Brooklyn boy. Moved from Brooklyn out to Long Island when I was in junior and high school. Went to the High School of Music and Art in New York City. Studied voice. They threw me out because my voice changed when I was 16. They said, you're no longer qualified for our school.
The restaurant world is all the richer.
Absolutely, no question about it. You can't cook and sing at the same time. Well, that's not true. There may be a few of those around.
I'm going to back up all the way because, I mean...
Well, I actually didn't want to get into this business.
You didn't? Well,
no,
so how'd you end up to TGI Fridays?
I was a perfume and flavor salesman.
Perfume and flavor.
Right, which is called the essential oil business.
Okay.
But basically essential oils are perfumes and flavors that you sell to people that manufacture pharmaceuticals and candy and ice cream. Okay. And that was the business that I was in. So if you consider selling 77 barrels of raspberry flavor to Pfizer, a methodology for getting into the restaurant business, you got it.
Sounds like industrial sales to me. But
Absolutely not. No, and then I moved from one place to another and ended up on 63rd Street between First and York, and there was a bar there called the Good Tavern, bullet holes in the window, typical New York bar. And I used to stop on the way home from work, I think it was 27, 28, I was single, and have a beer. It was just a typical First Avenue bar. And said to the bartender, you know, you ought to put some Tiffany lamps up here, throw some sawdust on the floor, serve a good hamburger, and you'd have all the single people. There's nobody but single people living in that area. There was actually a building called Stu Zoo. You can imagine who it was filled up with. So eventually one day I walked in and he said, you know that idea that you had? It's an interesting idea. And I said, great, let me speak to the owner. And he said, I am the owner. And $5,000 later that I borrowed from my mother at a great risk of hers. Well, $5,000 in 1965 was a rather large risk. I ended up getting a little lucky and calling the place TGI Fridays. And my business plan was exquisite. It was meet as many single girls as I can and have a good time. And that's the start of TGI Fridays.
It's supposed to be a cautionary tale or recommendation? I don't know.
I'm not quite sure. All I know is that was exactly my business plan at the time, and to get my mother back her $5,000.
Now, we'll fast forward because, I mean, you took off here. People around America, Smith & Wollensky's is ubiquitous. It's this place that's been around forever. And this look sort of encourages that. I mean, like Gallagher's, like a Keen's, like a Peter Luger. I mean, you walk in here and it looks like, yeah, chop house, saloon, survived the Depression and Prohibition, and here we are today. How many S&Ws do you have around now?
We have 11, one in each of 10 other cities, scattered around from Boston down to Miami and all the way out to Las Vegas. I believe now that we're a public company, we are pushing in the direction of Smith & Wollensky because we've developed a tremendous brand name around the country. And going back 6 years ago, we didn't have that. We had a brand name, but it was a New York-based brand name. Now that we are in 10 other cities, and we have, I think, 7 of the top highest grossing restaurants in 100 in the country.
And they're welcome. I mean, I did a Google, and you go to Boston, and they love the Smith & Wollensky there. You
exactly.
I mean, where you are, you fell right in and emerged at
very well received, very well respected. We're now selling steak sauces. We're selling salad dressings. You're drinking our own wine, which, believe it or not, we sold 35,000 cases of wine last year on our own, and we're about to expand it into retail shops around the country. So I think that we're trying to become the fine dining steakhouse around the country, and that probably will be where we will advance over the next 5 to 10 years.
I mean, we're here in the dry aging room. You know, I always like to hang out in here. Yeah, you're gonna eat steak? I wanna see these things. So here we are, and it's huge. I mean, this is a really big dry aging box. And this is some of the older meat. And again, we talk about this all the time. You can see it's checking up. It's just, you know, the age, that's, all the moisture's wicked out of that. That's gonna have to be trimmed off. This guy next to it, same thing. This is the other end of the steak, the nerve end. You can see the nerve here, but I mean, this is just, what's it lose? 20% of its volume, 25% of its volume by water. It's the story of a great steakhouse. You can't have a great steakhouse, in my mind, if you don't do prime and you don't do dry aging. I mean, you can have a good piece of meat, you can do choice, you can have it wet aged. Maybe most people won't know the difference, but for me, this is the heart of the great steakhouses in this room. They've made this investment. This stuff cost a ton of money. Tastes great on the plate.
In order to really have a great steakhouse, you have to put together the flavor of a restaurant, the food of a restaurant, the taste of a restaurant, and all of the things that go with that, including the service and the atmosphere that goes with it, and then add the steaks to it. The genre is going to change as it goes along, as it has for the last 100 years. And steakhouses that want to stay alive in this world today are going to have to be restaurants first and steakhouses second, because they're the people that are really out there and saying, we have got everything that you want as a customer. You'll get great service, you'll get great atmosphere, you'll get great wine, you'll get great desserts, and that I think is the ones that will survive. Not to say that there isn't an odd one here and there around the world or around the country that can keep exactly the way they were 100 years ago and still do a great job, and the answer to that is Peter Luger.
I was about to say this because we went across the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do believe they're in the vernacular of restaurant business, they're called freaks. And that's fine because they work absolutely perfectly for what they are. But there aren't very many of them, and I don't think that if you opened up Peter Luger in Minneapolis, Minnesota today, you might find that you will do as well as you would 100 years ago in Brooklyn.
Not content with just running the very successful Smith & Wollensky restaurants, Alan's opened many great restaurants since, like Park Avenue Cafe, where he tapped David Burke, who was red hot off his stint at the River Cafe. Maloney and Porcelli downtown, and of course the Manhattan Ocean Club that had been here for years doing a fine business. But doing a fine business isn't good enough. You need fresh blood every so often. And to do that, he tapped the wonderful chef Craig Kaketsu, who I'd known from the kitchens of Les Binas.
The Manhattan Ocean Club, as good as it is and as high as it's rated in Zagat and other places, it's constantly changing and constantly being redone, new furniture, new painting, new this, and of course, most important of all, is new chefs. So here we have a young man coming out of the best restaurant in New York City, according to everybody, Les Binas, and he's willing to take on this job. Well, one of the things he said is, you have to change your menu. And we said, of course we have to change our menu. We're going to do this. And he said, I don't think you're going to do this. I think we're going to do that. Now you have, in hiring somebody, the ability to go back and forth, and you'll find out whether you have a chef that's willing to bend and an owner that's willing to bend. And we now have ended up with what I believe is one of the new contemporary seafood restaurants in New York City.
The concept of this restaurant when it first opened was to be sort of like a steakhouse that serves fish. Big, huge portions of fish, broiled, and then put on a plate, and then some sort of really simple sauce, or like a butter sauce or something like that. And that's what it was. And it pretty much had stayed that way for the 19 or 20 years it had been open prior to my coming here. I didn't want to go that direction because that's not to my taste. I really wanted to go in a lighter direction. And I think that's what they were looking for also. So it was a sort of good fit from the beginning.
All right, this is a crab cake. Let's just go right in here. The anatomy of a crab cake. Beautiful, crisped outside. I mean, really standard breading with panko. Look at that piece of crab meat. What's my sauce here, chef?
That's a piquillo peppered sauce.
I notice your sauces here are really very different.
Right.
Really kind of almost Eastern influenced.
Right.
A lot lighter, a lot more polished, a lot more assiduous. You know, they're just
Right.
Flavors that polish the fish flavor. Don't
mask it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
You know, I think the whole thing about, I talk about this with a lot of people, the whole thing about fat and butter and things like that is it acts as a flavor transmitter, so like it coats your tongue. And that's
Literally.
That's what makes it pleasurable to eat. And when you take fat away from the equation, you just have to substitute it with more flavor, so people don't miss it. So that's what with that philosophy in mind, that's what we've done with a lot of the sauces, is just sort of amped up the flavor and taken out the fat. There's a big Southeast Asian influence here. And a lot of that comes from my sous chef Hung. He's half Vietnamese, half Chinese, and I love those flavors. I've always loved those flavors.
This is what you were talking about upstairs.
That's a sauce variety, yeah. Tomatoes, capers,
Little bits of lemon.
lemon, basil, fresh. It goes with every fish.
Oh man. How can you go wrong? You got this beautiful seared raw tuna, French fries, avocado. I love it. You learn something every day. Alan's a great art collector and a great wine collector, but let's talk about art. All the plates you see on the walls at the Manhattan Ocean Club are original Picassos.
I'm a collector, and my own personal art collection is eclectic, and the art that is in all of the restaurants is eclectic. But if you walk around, you'll find that 90% of the artifacts in all of my restaurants are original artifacts.
Well, Alan Stillman, you know, this guy's a great story. New York's got these great impresarios that come up every so often, a few a generation, you know, Drew and Danny Meyer, and, you know, Alan, this salesman from New York native, Long Island, living in Manhattan, wants to meet waitresses, opens up a bar called Fridays, which becomes TGI Fridays, which becomes a chain. Then he does Smith & Wollensky at the site of the old Manny's Chop House, which goes on to become the Smith & Wollensky Group. I don't know how many there are now, 16, 17 around the country. Park Avenue Cafe, he tapped David Burke when David Burke was at River Cafe. So, you know, he's got a great eye for talent. And, you know, it's impressive. You know, on one hand, you got a guy I love like Ben Benson that runs a store, one man, one restaurant, you know. It's kind of my model. I can't think too much bigger than that. And then Alan just got this vision and puts together teams that make it work. You know, finds the people, finds the talent. You go into his restaurants and you'll find waiters and waitresses that have been there for 15, 20 years. I mean, guys that'll tell you, yeah, I've been here since a month after they opened. And I don't know what that whole group grosses a year, but it's, you know, it's got to be like 70, 80 million a year in that Smith & Wollensky group. It's a phenomenal business success. And he's kept consistency. Again, it's something I've never figured out how they do. I mean, Smith & Wollensky's are really famous steakhouses all over the country, usually the best in each city they're in. At the Manhattan Ocean Club, he's got a great guy in Craig. I knew him when he was at Let's Be Honest with Christian years ago, and he's just a really good cook. You know, as he gets older, like all of us do, he gets better. He's more assured. He's got that wonderful Hung, I think the guy's name was, the Chinese, his sous chef. So they've got these great sort of Asian influence things. So I'm thinking, what do I cook after that? Well, I want to keep it kind of traditional because he uses a lot of fresh and traditional things. And at the same time, a little different, a little innovative, but not, you know, off the wall. So soft shell crabs are just coming in. It's spring. And I've got these soft shells. I had them in the freezer, so they've been mercilessly killed, if I can say that. But they're beautiful. This is the first batch I've had in this season. They're nice size. They're plump, big, heavy. These are going to be great. I'm going to batter them the same way I do fried chicken. I'm going to soak them in buttermilk for about a half an hour, turn them over in between, dredge them in a combination of flour, a little bit of salt in there, and black and white sesame seeds. And then I'm going to saute them in kind of medium hot oil till they get this beautiful crisp skin both sides. Finish the pan with a little butter. Flour is going to pick that up, so they'll have this unctuous, bready, crispy, nutty, buttery outer texture, and then this crab in the middle that's, you know, how do you go wrong with soft shells? And there's a foil for that because that's a lot of rich components. I want something that's a foil. So I'm going to make that real simple vinegar-based slaw, which is carrots, cabbage, black mustard seeds, celery salt. What else is in there? Oil, vinegar, blah, 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 salt, sugar. Bring it all to a boil. Pour it over the shredded cabbage. Toss it. Refrigerate it. It's good the next day. We're going to make a batch now. I have another batch waiting to go that we can do on real time with the show. But so slaw with this, soft shells, and I think it's a great spring into summer meal, which is when soft shells come in. So first thing we're going to do is actually make the slaw. I've got just a regular old head of okay cabbage here. I'm just cutting the centerpiece out so it falls apart. Go here, get it small enough so that I can handle it. And we're just going to get a knife and shred. Beautiful. Going to add the onion. Now we're just on a cheese grater, just breaking it down. Go all the way down to the end. That's it. Now let's get these tossed, and we're just mixing them up the same way you toss a salad. And then we're going to make the hot liquid part of this and just pour it over. We need white vinegar, cup of just regular old, whatever salad oil you use, canola or corn or peanut, celery seed and black mustard. We need a little bit of ground dry mustard. This is going to be a cup of sugar. And of course, our usual touch of salt. We're going to get all this, go over to the stove, mix it, bring it to a boil, whoosh, pour it over the slaw. Remember, the oil's not going to boil, so you have the water under the, the vinegar under the oil is what's breaking through. The oil won't boil. So now we've got that vinegar hot. We're going to get that oil hot. We get the sugar dissolved. Get that crazy look like, what do you do when you can't boil us together? All right, I'm going to pour this right over the top. Let me get this to incorporate. And we'll come back and just smash all this down and refrigerate it overnight. Okay. Soft shells. They're really simple. You get them, you eat the whole thing, except for this. We take this lung out because this is where these little filters are where the thing's been breathing. So if the water hasn't been clean or if it got something in there that I don't want, I'm not going to eat this. So that little filter membrane. Then I'm going to rip out the digestive tract, and that's really simple. You just take the back and pull. That's out. And then off camera, we're going to take the face off with the scissors. Just cut that off. So right behind the eyeballs for there. And that's how you clean soft shells. Very, very simple to do. All right, I got them cleaned. This is one of my favorite natural little batters. This is how I make my fried chicken too. Just soak them in buttermilk. Now, I don't have to soak them long. I'm just using it to coat them. I've got some flour here. This is more than I need, but into it I'm going to mix some black sesame seeds and some regular roasted white sesame seeds. And these actually do have a great flavor and kind of that Asian twist thing. You know, Craig, the Asian thing. You get it? Yeah, he's a really talented guy. I'm looking forward to watching him progress over the next years because he's really just coming into his own. Make sure these things are coated well on both sides. All right, I'm going to put in a little oil here. Make sure it's even around. And we're going to go in. Got that good crust on the outside. Nuts all over them. So I want these to be really nice and crusty. In they go. I don't want that pan too hot either, because then the flour is going to burn. I want this thing to be golden and crispy when she's done. All right. See what they look like. That's nice. Got good color. You too. See, nice and crisp like that arm there. That's what I want to see. You see the shells turned red. You get this nice little crust here with the seeds and the buttermilk and almost, yeah, almost. I want to flip them one more time. Give it another minute. I'm gonna flip them. Then I'm gonna after I flip them for about the last minute, I'm gonna have butter in this pan, so the butter foams up and almost like poêles them naturally. That butter's gonna come up into the flour, get in underneath the shell. You know, some added flavor, a couple added calories. Flavor mainly, flavor. We're after flavor, right? This is cooking, okay? You want the diet stuff? You buy the crab fingers, your little surimi things, okay? So, all right, this is the last turn. See, that's a beautiful color. That's gonna be really crispy, really tasty. Same thing here. You got that really nice browned flour, buttermilk action going on. This claw's gonna be tasty. You know what we need? Probably a little salt. Have we salted these yet? No. You don't have to salt crabs too much because remember they live in salt water, but you have to salt them. Can't forget salt. All right, time for the butter action. We'll just work it around the outside of the pan. These suckers are going to rock. I'm in the middle. Yeah, it looks good. That's going to make them happy. All right. Oh, baby. That's what I'm talking about. All right, we got the beautiful slaw here. The crunchy, sweet and sour action going. That's good. This is great. So, seaside dining at its best. I'm going to put a knife in here so you hear how crispy these are. And I'm going to eat my favorite part first, which is the claws. Hey, listen. You hear that? It's great. I love soft shells. Like perfect food. Juicy, crunchy, tastes like the ocean, richness of the crab meat. You eat the whole thing. No waste on these bad boys. Let's cut into one. Doesn't get better than soft shells. Yeah, look at that. A piece of this here. Come on. The next day, it's delicious. Gets better every day. It's going to last for weeks in the fridge. So, you make this in one batch. This is also good in sandwiches. Got like a pulled pork sandwich or some kind of rich sandwich. I love to put slaw in there rather than lettuce, which is great as a foil. Crunchy, sweet, sour, works well with meats. Anyway, Alan Stillman, Mazel tov, very good career. And I should also mention, Alan's got one of the best wine collections on the planet. He's a great wine collector. He's got great taste. All of his restaurants feature super wine lists. He does a great job with that. So one of the things that makes Smith & Wollensky's a step above other steakhouses. They've got a great wine list, and the service staff really knows it. Manhattan Ocean Club is great. Craig is super. Alan, another 20 years of success to you. And signing off so I can eat this while it's still hot. Take care.